Welcome, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about how we are leveraging DPT at Sharp Healthcare for distributed domain-driven development environment. By way of introduction, my name is Holly Burch. I'm a data architect at Sharp Healthcare here in San Diego. And to give you a little bit of background information about Sharp, we're locally based here in San Diego. We have 4 acute care hospitals, 3 affiliated medical groups, 24 outpatient clinics, and 6 urgent care centers. For the agenda, I'm going to be touching on these points. The first is I'm going to discuss what our business problem was that led us to look at domain distributed development, and that is that our centralized enterprise analytics team is limited by resources. Then I'm going to talk about our vision for change, and that was the goal for going for domain-driven development. The third item is I'm going to talk a little bit about the implementation and how we put that in place, and that's going to touch on the technical configuration piece as well as integration. And then the next piece is also the people piece, that is onboarding these domain developers. That was a critical part, and that's identifying and training these domain developers. And then I'm going to finish up talking with a little bit about where we are now in our domain development practice. So section 1 is we're going to be talking about the business problem. So here you can see there's a picture of a log jam. This is on the Payette River. The log jam got so bad that they finally just set fire to it in order to clear it away. But this was our starting state in a way. We had a team of 9 developers, 3 architects, and I would say about 8 to 10 business analysts on our team, preparing data for analytics across the entire enterprise there at Sharp Healthcare. We were limited by team size and also by tool licensing costs. And our starting state stack was, and still continues to be as we're migrating off of these, Informatica for our ETL, a lot of Oracle stored procedures, and Oracle was our backend data warehouse. And for our presentation layer, it was IBM Cognos Analytics with the need to do framework modeling, and that was also one of our limiting factors for the licensing costs. So we're kind of in a transformation state right now at Sharp. There's a few things that caused this. One is Sharp decided a couple years ago to go cloud first, really trying to move all of our platforms to the cloud. And then we're also in the middle and kind of have completed some major platform migrations to the cloud. The one being to Workday ERP, and then our electronic health and medical record, we're migrating off of Cerner and TouchWorks Allscripts onto a single platform in the cloud, and that's going to be Epic. So with these major migrations, these are our key data sources that we're bringing into the data warehouse. It was time to look at our analytics tool stack and consider where we might also go cloud first as well. And so we did some analysis and looked at the different tools out there, and we ended up moving forward with this particular stack where we have Snowflake as our backend data warehouse platform. We're using Amazon AWS Web Services. We're using Fivetran for our extract and load. dbt Cloud is a big player for our transformations. And then Looker is what we're using for our reporting tool to replace that Cognos Analytics. And of course, I didn't list it on the slide, but we still do have a lot of Tableau dashboards in our organization. And with this transformation, moving to this new stack where things are on the cloud, we were able to start considering some big changes. On our old stack, we had that Oracle data warehouse. We never let any of our domain users log on to that system. We never set up the security to do so, right? And also, if there are others in the organization, we really didn't want to put desktop tools on their machines. And so with the cloud platform, again, we had an opportunity to really transform. So kind of looking at where we are on the left side here compared to where we could transform. So not only were we looking at our tool stack, But we also had the opportunity to look about how are we doing analytics development in organization and how are we supporting Sharp as a whole. And so you can see on the left the different domains. We also call them service lines at Sharp, but we have our clinical folks doing clinical effectiveness analytics, revenue cycle folks, marketing, foundation. You can see there's several, and this is only a list of 8. We have up to about 25 to 30 of these different domains, all supported by our centralized enterprise analytics team. And you can see that there's sort of a bit of a resource limiting factor here. We're supporting all of these different domains. And so with this other transformation that we're working on, moving to cloud, moving to our new large source platforms of data, it's an opportunity for us to look at allowing and getting the domains involved in some of our software development lifecycle. And you can see where I've taken these and I've kind of have them encircling our enterprise analytics team, which always still needs to be there to support that sort of domain agnostic platforms. And also, we're mostly involved with bringing data onto the platform so that it can be used for analytics. And I'm showing that some of these teams are sort of in different colors, different shadings, to also indicate that they have different skill levels. Like you can see, for example, we've got clinical, our health plan, and our rev cycle domains in a darker color. These folks are very skilled with SQL. They were able to naturally work their way into DBT development, whereas some of the other teams in the lighter colors are just sort of coming on board. So when you say domain development, it's not that right away, boom, everybody's doing domain development in the organization. And then some folks I'm showing in white, we may always, as an enterprise analytics team, be supporting them across the full SDLC. So with this, we have some questions. Is it possible to allow our business analysts to take on a portion of the SDLC? And how do we set up security and development in the analytics tools to do so? And I feel like that's something I haven't really heard. I've heard a lot of talk about domain development, but security is a huge issue. The data that someone in clinical can access and work with is totally different than, say, our HR folks. So these are things that need to be taken into account. Another question is, how do we evaluate which business analysts are candidates for doing DBT development? How do we train and prepare them? And then how do we support them? Sorry, that got cut off the bottom. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the advantages of domain development. The first is the domain groups really know their data best, right? They know the KPIs, they know what data might be missing, what data they're looking for. And also, if they're doing DBT development or modeling the data themselves, they take that knowledge then into the BI tool. And we've seen with Looker as our presentation layer now, we're seeing a lot of back and forth with Looker and DBT developers because it is a back and forth. You know that you want to present something in Looker and you may need to go back and forth multiple times with that data set that you're preparing in DBT, right, with those MART views. So there's really a lot of good interaction there. And then also, if the domain developers can participate in the SDLC, that allows the enterprise analytics team to focus on new technologies, generative AI, bringing more data into the data warehouse. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about our vision for change. So here you can see we have our original state, and each of these sort of boxes along the way is part of our, what you might consider the analytics software development lifecycle. First, we source and land data. That would be your data pipelines. We also do some data vault modeling. I just wanted to make sure that was on the slide. And then we are doing data mart development with DBT transforms. And then the semantic layer development for Looker. And then finally, report dashboard development in Looker and Tableau. And what I'm trying to show along the top are sort of the personas of people that are involved in each of these steps in our current state. And you can see we have BI analysts and devs are those that have a little gear on them. In our starting state, they were involved all the way across, and you can see it wasn't until the very last step with our self-service tools, Tableau and Cognos Analytics, that they were involved in that dashboard development. And where we're looking to go, and where we have been moving to, is more of a domain-driven development environment, approaching data mesh. And I'm not saying we're doing data mesh, but we're definitely approaching it, where we still have the same SDLC steps, and we still have our BI devs and analysts involved across, but we're also starting to bring in our different teams. And so you can see we have folks like the lab domain, the pharmacy domain, internal audit, marketing, and you can see that they're on different points along the domain development lifecycle. So we may have our lab and pharmacy folks, they don't have analysts with SQL skills on their team. Those folks are going to need to be supported by us, and we'll be doing their DBT development for them, but they'll be doing reporting and dashboarding. And then you may have folks that are a little more comfortable in putting the semantic layer together, like for instance in the picture, marketing and internal audit. They're able to move further back along the stack. And then you've got those folks that are pretty darn sophisticated. We're talking like our clinical effectiveness team, supply chain and finance, that are working towards that ability to be able to do their own DBT development, creating their own data products, and making those available for the organization. Along the bottom too, I'm showing data governance. So this is one of the things that's critical that we have really been building up in order to be able to manage this, because can you imagine that each one of these is a different team, and how do you make sure that they're all sort of following the same SQL standards and guidelines? And making sure that if they are creating data products that they're going to work for others, right? That they meet that contract. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the implementation, about how we made this happen. And I'm kind of showing the three-legged stool here. The integration was key between all of the different tools in order to make this work. I brought up security before, but that was one of the critical pieces. We have come up with a unified security model, and we are using AD groups to manage these across our stack. So we have the same domains and security set up for those on Snowflake and DBT and Looker across the stack. And that's what makes this work. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the security later. But by domain, we have several different levels of ability, and you need to do that depending on their capabilities within the tools. And you also want to do that to limit your licensing costs. So for instance, the lowest level user in the domain would be just someone who consumes dashboards, right? They just need a Looker viewer license. Or a reporter would be that person who can do dashboard development. A developer is one who is on Snowflake. They might have their own schema, writing views. And then those that have those really elevated skills are able to get a DBT developer license and participate at that level. In Snowflake, we have dev and production environments. And the way we've set up the security is we have one MART schema per domain. So we have a marketing area, marketing schemas. We have clinical schemas. We have HR schemas set up so that the security allows those domain developers to work within their sort of sandbox schemas. Also within DBT Cloud, we have one DBT Cloud project per domain. So we started it this way more than like a year and a half ago. And it's interesting to see to hear some of the presentations about how you take one big monolithic project and then have to split it up. And I'm very glad that we started with the view of setting up the domains from the get-go. It really helped. And again, I said in DBT Cloud, the developer license are driven by AD group membership. And then GitHub, of course, we have one repo per DBT Cloud project. And then some of the data governance around these changes are we are enforcing peer reviews before merging into the main and master branch. And we are moving towards Slim CI integration now. So just showing in a pictorial form what our dev and production environments are. At this point, we originally started with a test environment, and it just found it really wasn't, because DBT has that local developer area, we found that the test environment really wasn't needed. And so you can see we have a certain number of databases. Load is where we have our raw data landed. Staging is for persistent. We use DBT often to transform from load to stage. And then the more curated data is the MARTs. And here I'm showing a persona for a marketing developer, how the security is set up on our Snowflake platform. You have a particular marketing user, and this shows the different hierarchical roles that needed to be set up in order for them to be able to access the data within their own marketing mart and to be able to select the data against which they're building these marts. Just highlighting again, we have one cloud project per domain mart. Okay, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the onboarding piece now. So for domain user onboarding, one of the keys is being able to identify the domain developers. And we're looking for folks that can even just pass a simple SQL test. We're looking for someone who knows how to write a SQL statement, understands joins, aggregations, and filtering. Those are sort of like the threshold to get in. And once that happens, these folks, we start them training on Snowflake. We give them a personal schema that they can use in Snowflake in the dev environment. The way we found it has been successful is working with a domain-focused group. And it's usually like 1 to 6 people at a time. And the reason why I think it works is because we're using a data set of their own. It's data that they're interested in. It's not some training data set. It's like, hey, we have a data set. We're going to bring this all the way through to Looker or Tableau and start reporting on it. So as I said, they get the personal Snowflake schema. They get comfortable profiling data on Snowflake, creating their own view in their schema. They might start doing modeling of Looker data using LookML and then Looker dashboard development. And then after they've been on the Snowflake platform for a while, if they're showing a high level of proficiency with SQL and a general understanding of how you organize and write good quality code that performs well and meets to the standards, right, the development standards, then we look at starting to getting them trained on DBT. And this is usually done with focus sessions with just a few DBT developers. So I want to talk a little bit about where we are now with domain development and practice. So here you can see on the left all the different kinds of data sources that we're bringing onto our Snowflake platform. There's a lot, and so these are secured and provided and available to the different domain teams depending on what the data is and whether it's needed for their particular role in the organization. And you can see we're building analytic marts, and I have it kind of grouped, as I did before on that other slide, by different levels. So if you consider it almost like a restaurant franchise, you can see we have fully franchised teams like our clinical effectiveness team, RevCycle, and Sharp Health Plan that are doing DBT development. They're working all the way across the analytics stack. And then we have those that are sort of partially franchised. We're still supporting them, and that may be because they don't have anybody on their team that will be a DBT developer, or they're just not ready yet. And those are some other teams like System Finance, Sharp Re-Steely, which is one of our medical groups, that kind of thing. And then we're always going to have those domains where we're going to have to be the full support. We're going to have to be doing all of the reporting for them. And I can say that we've been on this journey now for probably about 1.5 years. And I can tell you that the outputs that are coming out are really exciting. The velocity of development, it does take a while to get the domain developers there and working. And it's just a pleasure to see them really driving forward and making progress and moving quickly to produce outputs that are important to the organization. So with that, I'd like to conclude. If you have any further questions, I'll be here after, or you can email me at holly.burch@sharp.com. And I believe we can continue the conversation on Slack. Thank you.